Yes, I'm here with Graham Talbot, who is the CFO of Maersk Energy. And thank you so much for wanting to come here and talk about diversity with me. And we're going to discuss what is diversity and why do we need more of it. And when we talk about diversity, we mean both gender diversity but also cultural diversity. So Graham, first of all, in your experience, what is the importance of diversity in an organization?
So firstly, thank you for the invitation to discuss what's a really interesting topic and something that I still think is quite misunderstood by a lot of people. So I think the main value case around diversity is that business is becoming increasingly competitive and complex in the world. Everything's speeding up with digital, and we need to be able to make faster decisions, but also often more complicated decisions with more inputs. So we need to generate more options when we're thinking about what we need to do. Mm-hmm. That can be both operational decision making, but also strategic decision making. So if you're not succeeding in business and you need to change course, often that's very difficult to do with the same resources and the same information. Mm-hmm. So you need to actually get more stimulus, you need to get more options on the table. And that for me is a lot more divergent thinking mm-hmm. before you start to converge on solutions. Mm-hmm. All of that just leads to diversity. Yeah. So if you want to get different outcomes, you need to get different inputs. Mm-hmm. And therefore having a more diverse workforce mm-hmm. Enables you to get a lot more different data points on different issues, and therefore be able to construct higher quality decisions mm-hmm. and higher quality answers to your problems.
Yeah.
So for me, that's the sort of overriding sort of macro reason of why diversity is so important in the business community.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's not to mention there's also a lot of social issues around why diversity is important as well. But I think if you look at it in the more holistic sense, it covers both the social side as well as the business side.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think a lot of organizations, they talk a lot about diversity at this moment, but it's another thing about actually implementing it. How do you think, in your opinion, how do you go about implementing diversity in your organization?
Yeah,
it's a hard one.
So I've been a part of many management teams who have struggled with, you get a mandate from the board that you must do something on diversity, that diversity is important. And that's normally all the instruction you get, and then you have to try and make it work. Mm-hmm. And I must say, I've seen a lot of poor examples as well, which are often end up just being gender quotas. Mm-hmm. So just saying we need more females in this part of the organisation or on the management team, and so by 2022, we'll be at 10% or something.
Okay.
And that's just not what it's all about. No. But to sort of be fair, if you go back a few years, people didn't really understand the theory that well. So that brings me to really what the first thing you need to do upon implementation is to explain to people what it is that you're doing and why is it valuable and how do you create that valuable input through the diversity. Mm-hmm. If people don't get that base case, then I think unfortunately people revert to the examples they've seen in the past, which have been forced quotas, which tend to disenfranchise a lot of people in the organisation, and there's often quite a bit of inequity in it, and it causes a lot of resentment, so it completely undermines what you're trying to achieve. Yeah. So first up, make sure that senior management understands what's going on. Once they're clear on the value of diversity, then you've got to educate the organisation. And that's, I think it's a fairly short exercise to tell them what it's about, but to actually do it is not a short exercise.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's some very easy things you can do around, and although I've sort of made some negative comments about setting targets, I think there is a place for that. There's also often targets sent around making sure candidate pools for recruitment of jobs carry certain profiles within them, so you do get the opportunity or increase the probability of getting more diversity. So I think there's those sorts of things you can do. However, Just importing and recruiting a diverse range of staff into your organisation does not make you a diverse organisation.
No.
It gives you the resource base that you need. So that's great. And that can be a challenge in its own right. But more importantly, you have to be able to extract the value out of it.
Yeah, and how do you do that?
Yeah, well, I think this is where you now, so if you roll back a few years, it just used to be about diversity, and now it's diversity and inclusiveness. Because as we were just discussing, if you don't work out how to create the right culture for those people to be able to provide input and to participate and to be heard, then your investment in diversity is not going to get you anything.
Yes.
So that comes back to some real core cultural things about how does your organisation work? How does management respond to bad news? Is management comfortable with unstructured feedback? All these sorts of things, which, guess what, in a diverse environment, you have to be able to accept. You're going to hear things which you don't agree with. You're going to hear things which makes you very uncomfortable. But guess what? It might be the things you really need to hear to make the right business decisions. So I think creating that environment where all parties feel that they can actually participate and that they're being heard is the toughest challenge. So you can't just do one thing without the other. You can't have a heterogeneous work pool on one hand with no inclusiveness, and you can't, on the other hand, have a diverse work pool that can't participate. So you need to make sure that you've got the right combination of those things to get success out of it.
That's true. Yeah. And we talked about it a little bit, but is there anything as a leader that you should be aware of when managing diversity?
Certainly from my own experience, it really comes down to, so firstly, as we discussed, making sure people understand what you're trying to set out and do.
Yeah.
But then I think it really comes down to these soft skills. And a lot of the soft skills that we're talking about make good business sense anyway for people to do. And here I'm talking about real basic things about how they listen, active questioning, all of those sorts of things are all core ingredients of how to get people to participate. But you have to focus on them even more when you're trying to work with a diverse organisation, because you have people from different cultures, backgrounds, educational experiences, life experiences. And there isn't a generic way of communicating with the whole world. So you have to think of ways of questioning and bringing out input from those people, because you can't just sit at one table and ask one question that everyone can answer the same way.
No.
So I think it comes back to a lot of those soft skills.
Yeah.
And some organisations already have a culture that sort of enables that, and therefore they can sort of plug diversity in fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But I would say most organisations actually need to have an active program of how do you develop that environment and that culture to make it work.
Yeah, yeah. Is it something that doesn't really, what can you say, go well with the way we have traditionally organized organizations?
I would say it is a bit of a leap of faith for some organisations, because it's, I think it requires a much flatter organisation, or a much more level playing field, in that we're diverse, we are different, we have to accept different views. Of course, you're always going to have some sort of hierarchy in an organisation, but in a way you're trying to stimulate more input from more levels within an organisation, which I think makes many senior managers uncomfortable, because they're used to information sort of either flowing down from them.
That's easier. It could seem easier that way.
Or coming up to them in a very specific way, like a report. Rather than someone sitting there in their face saying, this is wrong, we project the wrong image to the market, we're not in touch with our customers, we really should be thinking about operating this way in country XYZ. And those are the real powerful conversations that have to come out from a diverse organisation. So I think the real key is how do you unlock the value?
Yeah.
And that really just comes back to creating that culture.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Graham.